No? You're okay? You said no, so that makes me think maybe you're not okay. All right. Yeah, so I got a funeral tomorrow morning. That's going to be hard. Oh, yeah, I know. It's a person who used to be very involved here, but moved to Oklahoma. Her son has passed away. So tough situation. So yeah, but I'll do a graveside at National tomorrow for them. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, the gentleman was a career Air Force, 20 years in the Air Force. But anyway, yeah, I actually knew him a little bit too. I talked to him a few times, lengthy times on the phone, so knew him a little bit. Let's see. So I hope you guys are having an okay week. We've been working through the book of Revelation together. And we're nearing the end of the book of Revelation, so figuring out what we're going to do next, I think, is of some interest to me. Like, what do we study next? I'm tired of end time stuff for a little bit. I think I like to move on to some other stuff. It's been good, but 121. We're on lecture 121 or Sunday school lesson 121, and that's a long time to be in one book. It's not like we do that on Sunday mornings in the services or anything. That was a joke. Yeah, we're way over that on the Gospel of John. But actually, we're going to finish the Gospel of John. So I'm going to finish Revelation and John both here this fall, and that's weird to me. So life after John, because he's the author of both those. So life after John. I should probably do 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John just to double down on everything, but no, I'm not. I'm going to do Galatians on Sunday mornings in terms of study for preaching, but for this group, I'm not sure. I was tempted maybe to bring back my Micah Isaiah study, which I really, really enjoyed, and spent a lot of time prepping, but some of y'all have been through it. So I think you watched a lot of those live on Facebook Live. Some of y'all were involved in that. And so I don't know if that'd be too much the same thing. I mean, it was over 4 years ago. That was over 4 years ago. Yeah, I forgot it, so good. Okay, so we could do Micah and Isaiah. Those two prophets together both prophesied at the exact same time period. And in terms of Jewish history, a really significant time period. I mean, like Isaiah is the greatest written prophet of the Old Testament. I think that's a fairly safe statement. Jews view it that way, and I think New Testament writers view it that way. Isaiah is the greatest Old Testament author, written prophecy of the Old Testament, and covers really themes. He's also the most New Testament, Old Testament prophet. I mean, his themes are very Pauline at times. He sounds like you're reading Paul almost, and it explains why Paul quotes from him so much. So we could do Micah and Isaiah. There's a lot of prophecy there. There's some hard things there. We'd have to work through some of the history. You have to know who Assyria is and who Israel is and who Judah is. We'd have to learn some of the kings of Israel a little bit to know Hezekiah and Uzziah and people like that, and get to know the various kings and their role in that. But I was tempted to maybe do that. I have lots of prep already on those things, which I really, really loved doing. And I was like, man, I should redo that, learn it again, learn it better. And so we might do that. That was 46 one-hour lectures. So, it would take 40 of them were Isaiah. So I think 48, because 8 of them were Micah. And they're 2 of the easier prophets from the Old Testament to do also, because I think the material is a lot more familiar to us. Yeah. So we might do that. You're okay with that? You've already seen it, though. All right. Richard, you're okay with that? Huh? Oh, well, I'd say easier than Jeremiah, which I just did on Wednesday nights, and way easier than Ezekiel, which is my next Wednesday night study after I finish pastoral epistles. I want to do Ezekiel because I've never taught Ezekiel. And so that would mean if I get Ezekiel done, that would mean I've taught them all the major prophets from the Old Testament, which would be cool. Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Ezekiel, the three big ones, and I've taught the book of Daniel. So that would get the major prophets, and I'd feel like, okay, I've at least worked through those at one point with a portion of the church. Yeah, so anyway, well, again, it's really good to see you guys this morning. Where's that coming from? Do I have control of this or not? That's weird. I don't. Oh, that's the college young adults. I just changed their slides. I wonder if they are wondering. I was like, I don't recognize this. Some in here is hitting slides. Poor Trey's over there going, why are the slides changing? Why are the... My bad. Oops. Yeah, that's the thing. Even when I'm in Asia, if the service is live, I can control the slides from my iPad. And I have been tempted a couple of times to mess with someone, but I'm like, I'm not going to do it during a service. I thought about doing it to Richard during a Bible study because I thought that'd be funny. And then I could put on Facebook, I'm just messing with Richard. But because you can message on here. If I had my laptop up too, I could message on there, But that sounds like a lot of work. So, and I'm naturally lazy, so that's not good. But anyway. Well, I hope you guys are doing well. We have a lot going on. DBU starts tomorrow. I have this funeral at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. Again, that's going to be really hard. Funeral is self-inflicted, so that's always hard. That makes life really, really challenging. So working through that with that family. And then DBU starts tomorrow. So I have classes tomorrow for math, which that's good. World's natural there. It feels normal there. But yeah, so MRA started back this last week, so that's up and going. Good group of students here for that. Pause back in, not this week, but the next, I think. Is that right? The next week, right? And so there's a lot starting back up. My baseball team gets back to practice at DBU here the first week of September. So I'm pretty stoked about that. And my book, I published the book on Ephesians. I ordered 35 copies, one for every baseball player and coach, one for every player and coach. So I'm giving those out. No one will read it, but I'm going to use it as I'm going to be like, hey, day whatever, Today we're going to look at day 21, encourage them to read it. I'm going to make videos each week for it. So we'll see what happens. But we have 2 practices a week, and we have 2 devotional things one at each practice. So on Tuesdays, we're going to do Ephesians 2, and on Thursdays, we're going to do Ephesians 4. So I've called it a life of faith and a life of integrity. A life of faith, a life of integrity. And I tell these baseball guys all the time, I'm not interested in making great baseball players. I'm interested in seeing great men of God who happen to be great at baseball. That's what I'm interested in. Because if you're a great baseball player and you don't love the Lord, you've wasted your life. And so I want to make sure that that's where we are on this. And some of these guys really can play. I told you guys that 3 weeks ago I had a guy drafted in the second round. First time I've had a high school player get drafted. And I'll have 3 more drafted over the next 2 years, which is crazy, including the potential of a first-round pick next year. We'll see. He's currently projected 35th pick overall. And the group I have this year of high school kids, as great a high school teams as I've ever coached throughout the years, including that one with Ryan Johnson who just got drafted, and the team I had 2 years ago that went 38-5. As good as all those teams were, the terrifying thing to me right now is this roster is by far the best roster I've ever put together. Now, will that translate on the field? I don't know. But I have 6 legitimate D1 level pitchers on one roster. And all 6 of them are 90 plus. All 6 of them can really spin it. This all happened recently. I wasn't expecting this. I picked up a couple of guys in the last 2 weeks, and I'm just like, Oh boy. So now my bigger issue is managing that kind of expectation from players and what they expect to have happen now, how much they expect to pitch. And this is where we have to deal with the humility of doing what's good for the rest of the group, right? What's best for the team and not best for the individual. So some of them already signed with colleges too. So I'll just tell them, let's save your arm. What are we trying to prove here? Let's protect your arm. You're going to pitch for OU next year. Why are you worried about this? Or you're pitching for DBU next year. Why are you worried about this? So I hope I can talk to them like that. But the thing with all that is that my fear is that we'll be really successful. That's my fear, is we'll be really successful, and in the process, we'll forget that the Lord is the reason that we've been created and why He's made them with the gifts they have. And huh? I have no expectation of Florida and winning. I've already had expectations and had them crushed before. So I've now come in third, second, and third the last 3 years with some of the most unbelievable high school players on the planet. But that being said, win or lose in Florida, I don't care. 5 years from now is when I'll measure this. Not because they got drafted, but because I'll talk to them and I'll know they're walking with the Lord. I'll talk to them and they're a good husband or a good father or a righteous, ethical business person, a leader in their church. That's when I'll know if we've had success. We probably lose in Florida, but in 10 years, I'm not going to care about Florida. I'm going to care that the starting shortstop on that team loves the Lord and is serving His church. So that's what I'm trying to drive us toward. It's hard because these guys are high octane. They have some real expectations for themselves. But I think that's not unique to baseball players. It's a microcosm of all of life. We have expectations of what we want from life. We have priorities. And when you're young especially, you're like, I want this, I want this, I want this. And it's like, well, that's funny. You didn't name Jesus Christ in any of that. So what if you get all that and Jesus isn't part of it? You'll wasted all that effort, right? And so this is a good reminder for me. This is one reason why I want to drive around that, because if the baseball team wins a game, but Christ isn't honored, we lost, or I lost. This is true about our business every day. This is true about our families every day. This is true about our church. The church can be successful and not honor Christ. We've seen it, right? We're watching it unfold in some churches in the area where it's just like, man, that seems like lots of success, but that Christ hasn't been glorified in this, or He's certainly not glorified at this moment. And so we just got to be really cautious, all of us. And the book of Revelation really has a lot to do with this, because this is hard, right? This is hard for us to comprehend. But one day, everything that's really meaningful right now will all go away. That's hard to fathom, isn't it? I mean, we wake up every day, we're worried about kids or grandkids, or we're worried about job and job stresses, or our favorite sports team, or all those kinds of things. And we get to heaven, something tells me that the Dallas Cowboys' success might not be on our mind there. I don't know. I'm not a Cowboys fan. I'm not a Cowboys enemy. I don't care one way or the other. I'm a pastor, so Sunday sports are not really a thing for me, so I don't really watch the NFL. My only request on the Cowboys is you do one of two things. Either you kill it and win the Super Bowl, or you get eliminated from anyone's interest about week 5. Because they're a distraction to church work. And I would like them to either, if they're going to be a distraction, at least make it worth it so they win and the local economy benefits and everyone's happy, or spare us all, get it over early, and about week 8 we look at it and go, I'm not worried about the Cowboys. What's going on at church? See, you know what I'm saying? Like, one of those two options, not in between. In between is terrible, and that's what it's been in between for the last 30 years, and it's like, it's a killer to church. And so either win the whole thing and do great, or get eliminated week 5 and we can all get on with other things. So I don't pay much attention to them, but I do see it at church, though. If they have a noon kickoff, I know already that we will be down at attendance at 11, but the 8:30 attendance will be up slightly. Because there's a few people who are like, all right, I'm going to watch the Cowboys game from kickoff, but I'm making it to church. And then there's a lot of people like, church? Anyway. It's just fine. I get it. I understand. So that's not a judgment. It's just the reality. So, but yeah. I can't and talk. It takes concentration. There are people who can probably talk and do this. Have you seen the guy who juggled 3 of these and solves it in 2 minutes while juggling 3 of them? He juggles them and turns them while he's juggling and solves all 3 of them while juggling in 2 minutes and 10 seconds or something. It's the most ridiculous video on the internet. Yeah.
I saw a 5th grader solve it in 2 or 3 minutes.
Oh, really? Yeah. It usually takes me about a minute, but I do have to look at 2 steps. I have to check the steps still. I'm not quite got it.
There's an algorithm for it.
There is, I know. And so I've got all but the step 5 and 6 memorized. Those 2 steps. I'm almost on them, though. And once I get those memorized, I think I can solve it really fast. But it was a bucket list thing. I was like, you know what? I've never solved this stupid thing. So, yeah, anyway. It keeps me out of trouble, though, because, I instead of, I fidget, So instead of getting in ballroom fights or something like that, I've solved Rubik's Cube. So it keeps me out of trouble now, yeah. All right, so the book of Revelation, just thinking about this whole idea of how short this life is and how all these other priorities like the Cowboys or coaching baseball or school or work or family can be a distraction. We're reminded here that this is forever. This is forever. This world, if you're a believer in Christ Jesus, we're going to step into this world and it's going to be forever. And you have this experience, I suspect as well. There are moments in my 20s or 30s where things seemed really, really important, right? When I was like 25, I was like, man, this is the most important thing that's ever happened to me or the most important decision I've ever had to make. I don't remember the decision now, right? And the reason I don't is other decisions have come along, other priorities have come along, other things have come along that push that out of our memory. And other weightier matters have like, oh, I thought that was weighty. I thought that was stressful. This is way more stressful. Things like that. Well, heaven has this effect, I think, of taking all of the things from this life that we were like, man, this is super important, and just turning them into dust. And so I think when we read this text, so we have this John saying, and he showed me. So this is angel taking John on a tour of the destiny of heaven. I love that John finishes with this, given all the other part of the Revelation that would have been incredibly depressing. Right? Much of the book of Revelation is full out depressing. It's a bad mark on the human condition. It's a bad mark on the human condition, and the outcome is terrible for Christians. That's heartbreaking, those kinds of things. But we come to this end, and it's almost like for John to finish here. I wonder about for John just mentally and emotionally, getting this as his final vision to go, okay, we're going to be fine. God's going to make this all work out. God's going to make this, he's going to redeem it all. And John gets this glimpse of it that no one else has had prior to him, right? Maybe Paul. Paul got a heavenly vision of some sort. I don't know what exactly. He doesn't tell us, and he won't tell us. And he's hard to threaten at this point to get him to tell us because he's gone. But in this case, well, he does know, yeah. He's got even whatever he saw before, he's now seen it. Because that one, he wasn't sure if he was in person or out-of-body experience. So now he knows for sure. So chapter 22, this is the last chapter of the Bible too. When the church was picking the order of books, the New Testament ordering was a bit of an interesting dilemma. So it's ordered by the 4 Gospels, right? And then the first 3 are synoptics, and then John, which is unique, different than the other 3 in theme and focus. And then after that, we get the book of Acts, which is terribly confusing because Luke Acts is a 2-volume set, and it's separated by the Gospel of John. So that's a bit unfortunate. You have to remind people of that. But after Acts, then we get the Pauline letters, which makes sense because given that Paul is the focus of the end of the book of Acts, that actually does lead really well into Paul's letters. The only problem with Paul's letters is that they're ordered from longest to shortest. So that's not helpful sometimes because they're not in the order with which Paul wrote them. They don't fit well in terms of the book of Acts. Like you go, oh, he must have written Romans first in the book of Acts. Like, no, not really. And so that's a little bit hard because Galatians, 1st and 2nd Corinthians, First and Second Thessalonians, these would have been the earlier writings. The later writings would have been, First and Second Timothy and Titus. They do, land towards the end. But Ephesians, Colossians, so forth, toward the end. So that's a little bit difficult in that Paul's letters. But then after that, we have the book of Hebrews, and that's because they don't know if Paul wrote it or not. So he's like, let's put it there. And then after that, you get James, and you get Peter's letters and John's letters. You get Jude, and then the book of Revelation, right? So it ends with the book of Revelation. When the church was deciding the book of Revelation for their end, there's two reasons why they wanted it to be the end. One's the most obvious. What's the most obvious reason? It is the end, right? It's the end. The second thing was the last verses of the book of Revelation gives a warning. Remember this? The warning is a warning against those who add to the book of Revelation and those who take away from the book of Revelation. But the church wanted it at the end as a warning not just for the book of Revelation, but for the entire set, for the entire 66 books. And so John, I think, writes those words not with reference to the entire Bible, but with reference to the book of Revelation. But the church went, what would be great is to put that at the very end, because it's not just about the book of Revelation, it's about the entire 66 books of the Bible. And so the church put it at the end with that in mind, that people would read it last. Don't mess with the content of this book. So, but I think the main reason for Revelation being at the end is that it is the end of the story, and it ends with some really encouraging things. And I want to say this, we cannot study this theologically. We must read this in the very personal way of which it should be read. That this is one day, if you're a believer in Jesus, your reality. This is one day our reality. One day you and I will be having this conversation on the other side in this place. So I think my cowlick will go away and the balding spot on top won't be there, along with other issues that I have, like my back's bothering me and stuff like that. My knees hurt. And some of you are like, yeah, my shoulder is just not, Mike's like, I can't get my shoulder to do, right? So these things will go away. But I'm going to know Mike in heaven, I think. He may avoid me. I don't know. But I'll know Mike in heaven. I'll know you guys, right? We'll know each other. And I do think there's a great reunion where, I don't know if we'll remember this study, but I think it might be kind of cool to go, remember we were reading about this? This is so much better than we could have ever even tried to imagine while we were studying that. I don't know if we'll have a conversation like that, but that'd be pretty cool. Wayne walks up to me and he's like, we studied that for weeks and weeks, and it's still not enough time to even have our mind wrapped around it. Look around, I wonder if one of you will say to me, he's like, remember we studied that? Well, look around, look, I think there might be a little bit of that while we're there, just like, man, just the glory of God and what he's done. Look at the glory of God and look at these people. Look at these people. A bunch of broken, good-for-nothing knuckleheads, and look what he's turned them into. And glory to God for the transforming work. So I think there'll be, I don't know exactly conversations in heaven, but I wonder if there's not going to be a little bit of that of, remember we used to talk about this, and now it's here. Now it's real. And so I hope you've been encouraged by, there's parts of Revelation that are not encouraging, right? There's parts of Revelation that are downright depressing. But this one here, and this is John, I just wonder for John for a minute to just like think through his mindset. And he showed me a river of the water of life, clear as crystal. I'm just trying to wrap my mind around that, right? I think we're intended to try to wrap our mind around it because of all the language here. The language invites our mind to try to picture this. There's no other way to describe it than to go, wow, that he's telling us what it looks like. Well, if you tell me something like that, I'm going to be thinking in my mind, wow, what must that look like? And so John sees this. I'm trying to picture it. You probably are too. So we have this river of life, clear as crystal, coming from the throne of God and of the Lamb in the middle of its street. So now, Osborne takes some effort here to say, does that mean the water's running down the street, or that the street is split with the river, or it's beside the street? I don't know, right? Like, there's all this discussion in Osborne over this. There's a lot of speculation in this, but he says in the middle of its street. I'm not sure exactly what this looks like. Again, you use your imagination. I'm not going to wreck it for you. So it says, on either side of the river was the tree of life. On either side of the river was the tree of life. So I'm taking from this that the river is massive and the tree of life is even massiver. It's the mostest massivest. So, yeah, so we have this huge tree of life. Oh, I do think it's funny. One time we took the kids to Disney World. I'm not a big Disney World fan. I go to Universal Studios any day. I'm not a big Disney fan. There's a lot of reasons why, but the main reason is the coasters don't scare you enough. So, but they're at Wild Kingdom, right? That's the one, Wild Kingdom. They have this massive, it's not real, but they have a massive tree of life. Did you know this? It's called the Tree of Life in the middle of the Animal Kingdom at Universal Studios. I mean, at Disney World. They have something called the Tree of Life. And you can walk into this tree. It's this huge structure. And if I remember correctly, that's also where they have the video ride, A Bug's Life. And you have to be worried because they put stuff under the chairs. Some of the bugs get loose. They have stuff like to make you feel like bugs are crawling on the back of your leg, you know. So if you don't like that kind of thing, just don't get in that theater because, they'll blow water on you when some creature sneezes, and then they'll have these things up under your legs. If I wreck the ride for you, I apologize. But all of that's taking place in this, and that's very respectful of this Tree of Life, right? Here's this divinely inspired idea of the Tree of Life, and they put a video of A Bug's Life in there. But there's this thing they call the Tree of Life. It's the center point of Animal Kingdom, which is kind of interesting to me. But that's a makeshift, Hollywood made or Disney made. This is going to blow that away, I feel fairly certain. And so I don't know what this must be, I don't know. Just thinking about it. On either side of the river was the Tree of Life, bearing 12 kinds of fruit, yielding its fruit every month, and the leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nations. So I don't know exactly what this looks like, but this sounds pretty awesome. I'm sure artists have tried to capture this. Now, this goes back to Genesis chapter 2, 9, where in 10 it says, "Out of the ground of the Lord caused to grow every tree that is pleasing to the sight and good for food. The tree of life also is in the midst of the garden, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Now a river flowed out of Eden to the water of the garden, and from there it divided and became 4 rivers." Now, this reminds me of Osborne's statement here. He says, he's talking about this whole chapter, and he says this: "The purpose of God in the first Garden of Eden, Garden of Eden, was to provide a garden of delight as part of his covenant with humankind. Adam and Eve were placed in the garden not only to enjoy it, but to take care of it. In a sense, tilling the garden was an act of worship. At the same time, their whole existence was oriented to God." All right? So now what happens when they fall, right? When they fall, in Jewish tradition, when they fell, to the Jews, this, so Edenic, I guess the right phrasing, the Eden experience. The Eden paradise was then taken up to heaven to await the faithful. So in other words, even in Jewish theology, before Jesus came and before the book of Revelation, there was this idea that Adam and Eve had squandered this opportunity, and God, instead of destroying the Garden of Eden, reserved it somewhere, right? And is going to bring it back into experience at some point. Pretty interesting, right? Especially in light of the book of Revelation and the ending of this. So it says, here in Revelation, I abbreviated, sorry, it has once more come down to join the renewed earth and is now part of the eternal city. Eden has not only been restored, but has been elevated and expanded for the people of God in eternity. And this makes sense. The original Garden of Eden, this is for Adam and Eve and their immediate offspring, maybe. This is for the entire world. We find all the nations, right? So this is built for, this is pretty impressive. It does make me wonder a little bit about the tree of life in the Garden of Eden, though. Maybe it was that impressive, right? Maybe it was like this one, and it's just being brought back down, and Adam and Eve should have been super impressed with it and went, there's no need for the tree of knowledge and good and evil, right? But Osborne is saying that Revelation chapter 22 is letting us know that original Garden of Eden experience is now being replicated here in the book of Revelation. So Eden means delight, the Garden of Delight, it's a place of delight, those kinds of things. And so we're replicating that here now in Revelation. Osborne makes a big deal out of Ezekiel 47. I have some verses in here. I'm going to skip it just for time. I wasn't as impressed with how connected it was. I was like, yeah, a little. There is another text, though, in Zechariah chapter 14. It says this, "In that day there will be no light. The luminaries will dwindle, for it will be a unique day which is known to the Lord, neither day nor night, but it will come about that at evening time there will be light. And in that day living waters will flow out of Jerusalem, half of them towards the eastern sea, half of them towards the western sea, and it will be in the summer as well as in the winter." So it does sound like Zechariah, which is a very apocalyptic / end times eschatological book. This is the last chapter of Zechariah, and it does seem like he's on to the same idea. A new Jerusalem, and this new Jerusalem will have this flowing water, and the nations flowing, in all directions, and the nations coming to it. And light is there. All right. Now, the other thing we find is the healing of the nations. Sorry, I got my notes out of order. Okay, so the next thing is the healing of the nations. And from there, the healing of the nations, we are then told that the curse is gone. And the idea here is, I think, an answer to the question, and I get this question sometimes from people, and we've talked about this, is, okay, so we get to heaven. Well, if this is a replication of the Garden of Eden, and Adam and Eve had everything they needed, and it was glorious and beautiful, and God was hanging out with them, and now we're replicating that in heaven, and Adam and Eve's momentary decision plunged the rest of us into trouble. What keeps something like that from happening again, right? This is one of the questions people wonder from time to time. Like, okay, this sounds great, but how do we keep someone from doing something stupid again, right? How do we make sure this doesn't happen again? Well, I think there's a few things. First of all, that the introduction of evil occurs not from Adam and Eve, but from demonic influence, from the devil. And I think we've seen pretty clear in the book of Revelation chapter 18 through 20 that the devil has been dealt with permanently. So there's no evil from outside of humanity that will now influence or enter. The second thing, though, is the tree of knowledge and good and evil is not here. It's not present. There's not a temptation to sin. That aspect has been removed in the new heaven and new earth. There's not a temptation source in the new heaven and new earth. And so I think that, and then the third thing is that there will no longer be any curse. This seems to be a promise to John and to us as believers that this curse thing is now completely been done away with, that has gone away. And it says, "And the throne of God and of the Lamb will be in it, and his bondservants will serve him. They will see his face, and his name will forever be on their foreheads." We'll come to that forehead statement in a little bit later. That does ring a bit of reminder of early on in the book of Revelation when he talks about his name being written on them and things like that. We'll go back and look at that next week. But I do want to talk about this curse. What curse is he referring to here, right? There will no longer be any curse. What curse is he referring to? Okay, the curse that happened to Adam and Eve after they eat of the tree. There are other curses in the Bible. There are other declarations of curse by God on humanity in the Bible. In fact, even in Jesus, it says he became a curse for us so that we might become the righteousness of God in him. Galatians chapter 4, where it says Jesus was born of a woman, born under the law, so that he might redeem us from the curse of the law. He became a curse for us so that he might redeem us from the curse of the law. But the curse he's talking about, given the reference here to the Garden of Eden, is likely that original curse to Adam and Eve. That makes the most sense, right? And so just real quickly, thinking about this curse, this is what the curse was. So if there's no longer going to be any curse, I want to think through what things have been eliminated, right? Here's the curse. First of all, it's the curse of the serpent. Because you've done this, cursed are you more than all the cattle and more than any beasts of the field. On your belly you will go, dust you will eat all the days of your life, and I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. He will bruise you on the head, you will bruise him on the heel. Now, I think this means in heaven, Remember that verse in Isaiah? There's a verse in Isaiah that says that the lion will lay down with the lamb. I think this means in heaven that the animals aren't going to eat each other, we're not going to eat them, and they're not going to eat us. So, like, you're not going to go to heaven and go, ooh, wow, that didn't go well for poor Fred who lived down the street from me. The neighbor's dog just swallowed Fred whole. The dogs are bigger in heaven. So none of that. So nothing like that. Like, you're not going to get swallowed by an anaconda. I mean, I don't know if some of you are fearful of snakes, so I probably shouldn't be saying it out loud. You're like, please don't. But I'm just saying, like, these kinds of things will go away. This is part of the curse that will go away. There will no longer be any curse. So I think from that, the curse that came out of the Adamic fall, the Adam fall, is part of that curse was the animus between humanity and animals and humans and even animals and animals. Like, that kind of thing has gone away. And it does remind me of the great George Whitefield line where he says, when your neighbor's dog barks at you, it's as if it's saying, you're a sinner against my maker, and I'm taking up his cause. So I love that from George Whitefield. It's great. He thinks every barking dog that barks at you is chastising you for your sinful behavior and has embraced his creator's cause. Well, in heaven, the dogs aren't going to bark at us, I think. They might bark, but maybe not at us, right? So some of you think your dogs can speak English. So maybe in heaven, I don't know. Maybe. Yeah, the dog would speak to us, but they speak Yiddish. They speak Hebrew. They speak the language of God. What are we supposed to do there? All right, so there's that curse. The next curse is, to the woman, I will greatly multiply your pain in childbirth. In pain, you will bring forth children. Yet your desire will be for your husband, and he will rule over you. Okay, now this does lead to the question, will there be childbearing in heaven? Let's just deal with that. And the answer is no, because Jesus, remember that? Remember the parable of the woman? She marries someone, he dies, marries a brother, he dies, marries another one. There's 8 of them, right? 7, oh, that's right, 7 brothers. 7, yeah. Yeah, they made that play on words maybe a little bit in that musical, 7 brides for 7 brothers or something like that. But anyway, so 7 of them, right? So there's 7 of them. And so she marries all of them and never has a kid, right? Never has a child. And they all die, and then finally she dies, okay? And so they get to heaven, and they're like, okay, well, who gets to claim her as their bride? And Jesus says, in heaven, there will be no marrying or giving in marriage. And so it does seem like that part of the Garden of Eden experience will not be part of the heavenly experience, I think.
Maybe they'll all live together.
Yeah, maybe the 7, well, except for he says they'll be like the angels in heaven. So apparently angels don't have eternal partners, apparently. Gabriel doesn't have an angelic wife or anything like that. So, but so I don't, now I've gotten some pretty stern looks from people that are more seasoned than some about this idea that in heaven they will no longer be married to their spouse of many years. And I got pinched once over this claim by me. I got pinched once, yeah. Miss Jeannie pinched me over it. Yeah. I said, Miss Jeannie, yes, you'll know your husband in heaven, but you're not going to still be married. And she pinched me. I was like, Miss Jeannie, I'm just telling you what the Bible says. I mean, it was a love pinch. I mean, she was sweet about it, but I miss her, by the way. For the record, I miss Miss Jeannie. She was so great. But, I mean, at 75, she's our church secretary and was awesome at it. And I took her all kinds of places, too. Anytime I needed to minister to a female, and Kim was not available, I took Miss Jeannie. And I was like, we got to go somewhere. She's like, okay, where are we going? I said, we're going to go take care of this situation. And so she's like, all right, I'm in. So she went crazy places with me. So since she was older than my mom, I was like, all right, I'm okay with her riding in the car with me. And she was great. She was so great. But That was the one thing she and I did not see eye to eye on, is that I had the nerve to suggest that she and her husband's name was Roy, R-O-Y, Roy, were not still going to be husband and wife in heaven. She did not like me saying this. Now look, I think she and Roy are going to enjoy hanging out together. I just don't think the relationship will be the same, right? I think it will not be the same. So I've now offended everyone in the room. You're like, what are you talking about? But I think we'll know each other in heaven, which means I think those relationships will matter. I'm not saying they're irrelevant. I don't think you'll be like, we were best friends on earth, but now, you know what, I don't really care. I don't think that. So like if you've got really good friends, I think people you met at Matthew Road, you're going to see each other in heaven. We'll know each other. We'll say hello. I think our friends list will expand. Yeah, so I think, your community will get bigger fast, and you'll know all kinds of people, and it'll be awesome. So I don't think you lose, you just add to. The family gets, the friends group gets bigger. That's all. But I don't think the relationship of husband and wife, at least according to Jesus, will be there. So that part of the curse, I don't think the curse goes away doesn't mean that, that brings marriage back. What does go away, though, from this text then is what? What part of the curse will go away? There's two things here, I think. Pain and battle for control. Yeah, I think ruling over one another in some sort of way of that's derisive or harsh or unfun or anything like that, that kind of stuff. I'm not saying that happens in marriages now. I'm just saying any of that kind of part of the curse of this kind of one person dominating another, one person ruling over another in any kind of way that would be, because this is part of the curse is something happens between husbands and wives here that wasn't there before the fall. Is that a fair statement? I mean, without trying to delve into too much detail here, there was something about husband and wife relationships before the fall that gets damaged in the fall. Yes? Yes. I mean, for sure. Even in the best of marriages, I'm just saying they're not perfect, and one of the reasons they're not perfect is part of the fall is a battle or struggle that we each have for control of my own life. I don't want to submit to God. I don't want to submit to other people and their wishes, and there's this control issue, and I think it goes beyond husbands and wives. I think this translates into children. I think it translates into the workplace. I think this kind of battle over control and things like that, I think we see all the time. The other thing that's part of the curse, so I think those go away, pain and suffering and this battle for control, some kind of sinful, I want to be in charge or those kinds of things. The next part of the curse is because you have listened to the voice of your wife and have eaten from the tree for which I commanded you, saying you shall not eat from it, curses the ground because of you. Now this has led a lot of speculation that the rest of creation has been drawn into this because of Adam and Eve, right? Romans 8, the whole earth, the whole creation groans. A lot of people associate that phrase in Romans 8, the whole creation groans, to Genesis 3, where it says that because of Adam's sin, the whole earth was cursed. So animals suffer today because of what Adam and Eve did. The creation, I don't deny if people say, well, there's these environmental issues that are man-made. I agree. I think the creation's suffering because of man-made problems. I mean, we can look around. You don't have to be I don't care what your view on, if you think there's global warming or not, man-made and all this kind of stuff. We can easily say this, that humanity has done some things that have not always been friendly to the general created order. I think that's pretty clear. You see nuclear fallout, 3 Mile Island, things like that. I mean, clearly, that was not helpful. These things were not helpful to the general created order. I think we see it in, look at the poor triathletes from the Olympics. Did you see this? They swam in the Seine River and they're all sick. I think it's funny. They swam in Seine River and they all got sick. But they're all sick. And the reason for this is that Paris had cleaned up the river to where it was swimmable. But you know what happened? It rained. You say, well, wouldn't rain make the river cleaner? No, because it washed all the garbage from the city streets back into the river and contaminated it again. So these people they skip a couple of days, and finally when they do swim, a couple of them got super sick, wound up in the hospital. And so I would suggest that's a sign of creation groaning due to human sin, and sometimes direct actions by humans, not taking care of our environment, where you can't get in a river without having to go to the hospital. That's not a good scene on our part, I would suggest. And I think that's part of the whole creation is now cursed. The ground is cursed. It's hard to get food. You have to work by the sweat of your brow. There's, those kinds of things. Now, the last part of the curse, though, here is what? What's the very final piece of the curse to Adam directly is what? You go back to dust. You ever been to a Catholic funeral graveside, any of you? Where they have, did you know this? That the funeral home brings a container of ash with them. See, Protestants go get in the cars and drive off. Catholics wait till they put the casket in the ground, and then they take a scoop and they say ashes to ashes, dust to dust, and they drop ash on top of the casket. You never done this? I've done one funeral for a family that was Catholic, and that was how the funeral ended. And I didn't know this tradition is the priest, which meant me, goes first, I guess, in this exercise. So I didn't know this. So the funeral home director saved me from embarrassment. He's like, okay, dude, here's how this works. It's like, okay. So I didn't know. I'd never been to a Catholic funeral where I stayed at the graveside long enough to watch this. And not every Catholic family does this, but some of them want to do this. This is like a tradition. And they literally take dust and they ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Like from dust you were taken, to dust you return. The final aspect of the curse on Adam is you will die and return to the dust of the ground, right? And then the final piece of curse, and this is to both of them, they get clothed. We'll talk about that later, but I want to talk about this. They get cut off from the Garden of Eden. And this is where, in Jewish theology, the Garden of Eden is protected by the angels. They viewed it as it's protected by the angels in that it was brought up into heaven, and that the new heaven and new earth, Eden will be brought back down. And you see this in John's Revelation, where the tree in the center of the garden, the tree of life, all the rivers, all these kinds of things sound very much like the Garden of Eden. So it seems like the angelic protection. When I was a kid, do you ever think this as a kid? Man, I wonder if someone could find this Garden of Eden somewhere. You ever think that? It's like, hey, this is 21st century. We need some drones out there looking for the angel holding that flaming sword, right? I didn't know this, but under Jewish theology, the idea was that it's guarded by a flaming sworded angel, and this is easier on the angel. I always thought the poor angel too, like he's stuck there for all this time with no one around, but that this angel literally comes and brings Eden up into heaven and stands poetically as guard over it, not that Adam and Eve could get back into it anyway. So I don't know. This is a new idea to me. So, but I was reading about this week, and it's like, okay, Eden is now in heaven, and then when the new heaven and new earth come, Eden is brought back down into the midst of that. And so there you have it. All right, we're out of time. So that's the first couple of verses of Revelation 22. Again, this is good news. This is our destiny. So yeah, we'll get to go there one day, see it in person. You can correct me on all my bad Revelation theology. And I'll be like, man, you're right about that. I missed that piece of it. I'll be okay with it. I'll be okay. I'll be okay getting corrected. So, all right. Well, let's pray together. God, you are great and kind. Bless each one of us as we contemplate our eternal destiny. Lord, so many things compete for our passion. So many things compete for our desires, our wishes, our wants. So many things compete for your glory. And I just pray, God, that you, oh God, would do a work in us, that we would see you as infinitely precious in this moment of gathering, that day when we gather together in the new heaven and new earth, that the glory of the Lord filling the place, that would set our hopes and our dreams, our motives in the right place. And we pray, looking forward to that moment, Lord, when we will see you in all your glory.